Everyone, welcome back to another edition of AI Insiders from AI Marketers Guild, and great to see everyone here today. We have a guest speaker who I'm really excited about, and someone I have always just like, especially as we've gone deeper lately into the AI space, gotten to geek out with a few times, including this morning. And I can't wait to bring the conversation to a wider audience because there aren't that many people out there with really deep chops in building technology and also having tech at the really the underpinning for how to grow agencies, and who's seen a lot from early days through current days, and how agencies are embracing or running from some latest developments. And he's someone he was on just one of the biggest keynotes at CES that Shelley Palmer hosted, and a very sought after entrepreneur and speaker. So, Kevin Wassong, please, you can introduce yourself better than I can, but it's just great to have you here. Thanks for coming.
David, I really appreciate it, and also thrilled to see what's been going on with the AI Marketers Guild and how this has been evolving. I see there's a whole bunch of familiar faces on this right now, and thank you all for taking the time and listening to me talk. I would ask if anybody wants to interrupt at any time about anything, please do not hesitate to do so. I love that and want to make this as conversational as possible in terms of setting things up. Um, this one is kind of near and dear to my heart, and I'll kind of give you just a quick background on myself for those that don't know me. I've been in this industry for a long period of time. There may be some familiar names on here, may be some that aren't as much of a familiarity. I've founded a number of different companies. I started in digital. I was telling David I started in digital, and I'm not afraid to admit it, in 1995, having moved back from California to New York to work for a guy named Cliff Freeman and Partners, and ended up pitching and winning the Prodigy business with him. And I was telling David about the call that I got from Mike Ilitch, who was the founder of Little Caesars, who said, "Yeah, this franchisee has put up this thing called a website, I think it's called, and you need to send him a cease and desist. Take it down immediately." And I was like, well, let me check this out. So we dropped the Prodigy disk into the machine and got the dial up, and got to a page that had Little Caesars with a spear animated. And when he stamped the spear, the two pizzas shot up in the air, flipped around, and came back down on the spear. It must have been one of the first animated GIFs that had ever been done. And then it was his menu. And I called him back. I said, no, you don't understand what this is. This guy's brilliant. As a matter of fact, you should take this and share it with every other franchisee. So I was one of the first people in the digital group there. I left, went to Loan Partners, did Mercedes-Benz first kiosk and touchscreen system, then left to do Sotheby's first website and online auction with a company called Radical Media before that was sold to IXL, and went to J. Walter Thompson to start their first digital division in 1998. And so we built a lot of technology. We built a lot of platforms. Post JWT, I did one of the first consumer fintech brands. And then the last company before this one was a company called One Mobile, which was the first mobile advertising services group and technology for the broadcast industry in the US that was sold to Nexstar Broadcasting as part of the roll-up of all the independent broadcasters. And that was such an interesting opportunity in terms of getting into that space, because I met with a guy named Mark Thuman, Thuman, I think, who's now the head of Boston Scientific, that makes the robotic
Oh
dogs.
yeah.
And I met with him. He was the head of mobile at Google at the time. And this was my first meeting. And I said, how many engineers do you have? And he said, 12 or 15. And I was like, oh, wow. He said, how many do you have? I said, 8. And I felt really good about that meeting. And a year later, I came back. I said, Mark, how many engineers do you have? He said, 1,500. How many do you have? And I said, 8. And I didn't feel as good about that meeting in terms of where technology was going. So, I've worked with CMOs and built organizations and have just been in this space, and I love what's going on right now. I think in our lifetimes, Um, to me, there have really been three transformational technology movements I believe in my career. Number one, obviously, was the internet. Number two, to me, was really social media and what's happened with MarTech and social media. And we're going through number three right now, which is AI. And so, I really love what we're doing with marketing.ai, which on background is a domain that I bought over a decade ago. I tried to build marketing.ai with IBM Watson's team in 2016, but found that it couldn't be done. This is a quote from the CMO of MasterCard that he said in a conference a few weeks ago. And to me, this kind of encapsulated exactly the problem that we're setting out to address in marketing. The number of places where brands need to show up has exploded, but most marketing organizations are still using fragmented tools to manage them. And this is causing inefficiencies, inconsistencies, and ultimately lost opportunities. And so we think about that dynamic in terms of the major themes. Today, we obsessively measure media, but creative is what really drives performance. And now you're seeing this move and this big shift because advertising has really been about this battle between this storytelling and science. We all use the word storytelling, we all talk about science, but it's mostly looked at through the lens of media. That's number one. And number two, it's mostly looked at in vertical silos, right? So we look at today's landscape, and if you think about this explosive growth of AI, and especially Gen AI, we're really looking at a stage where they're focused on the vertical. In other words, Gemini is designed to make Google better. Grok is designed to make X better. Meta's AI, Microsoft's AI, all of the channels AI are designed to specifically improve their channel. I actually call those channels as we talk with clients, they often talk about data lakes. I'm sure everybody here hears that term about data lakes all the time. I kind of talk about those channels in the sense of data oceans. I mean, these are literally data oceans. They're not lakes. Most people don't realize that OpenAI has been pretty much reading the internet since 2015. This is a company that launched in 2015 and has now come out into the marketplace. Think about just the ability to synthesize and think through and understand all that data, which is really why it needed so much capital to go through that process. But how do you now take this level of fragmentation? In the last 20 years, we've seen a 300% increase in marketing channels. That's number one, which we were talking to an investor, and that investor said, your industry has a problem of the twos. And I was like, okay, explain. Too many platforms, too many tools, too many data sources, too many reports, too many dashboards, all of this stuff that we as marketers need to get our arms around, which, to be honest with you, AI is really a phenomenal solution to start to do this. And I go back to that first part of fragmentation and look at things vertically. We're really looking at things horizontally. We've created what's called the AI marketing model, which is aggregating all digital and non-digital assets across a marketer's ecosystem and understanding what works and what doesn't work creatively. Today, that's viewed through the lens of charts and graphs. So you have, your tableaus and your dataromas and your Excel spreadsheets, which, by the way, to this day, I am still absolutely amazed at how many major marketers use Excel as their source of truth. Line item, looking back in time, not really understanding that I need to be looking at this in real time now. That's what's really
I
important.
mean, when I was over at MediaOcean, it wasn't even really a joke that the biggest competitor for a lot of MediaOcean's products was Microsoft Office.
It's amazing. David, we met with one of the biggest sports leagues out there, and their head of analytics was there, and we said, how do you look at the performance of the individual teams? And he started to smirk, and I said, please don't say Excel. And he said, yeah, Excel. I was like, that's crazy. Excel sheets, Power BI, dropping it into that. You're constrained, our industry, and this is part of the challenge that I think we all face in terms of being marketers and technology leaders and in MarTech, ad tech, all of these things, is that we're constrained by budgets. I mean, that's number one. Number two, we're constrained by resources. Most clients aren't adding to their resource base. As a matter of fact, you're seeing them really scale things back. And the third one, which really is the most important, is we're constrained by time. We're all not getting more time in our day to do things. But at the same time, this last point is being completely unconstrained. And this way of explaining things, I was talking with Rashad Tabakawala, and I love how he's able to really synthesize things to golden nuggets. When you think of dynamic creative optimization, personalization, and Gen AI, you're amplifying the chaos. In other words, there's this increased volume and velocity of content that's happening, and there hasn't been a function to organize all of that, then to analyze it, and ultimately to optimize it and come back with that optimization. So, how do you get your arms around everything that's out there? And I'm going to show you our technology. We've created a single AI-driven platform that aggregates all those assets into one searchable horizontal view. It analyzes it, so providing real-time creative performance analytics across those channels. And then ultimately, we're extracting insights to improve creative integration and performance across all of that. It doesn't displace what you've already got, so it's non-disruptive. And we have a provisional patent on using color to normalize performance data, and I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like. Any thoughts or questions on what I've kind of set up so far?
This when I was in charge of analytics.
I'm sorry?
I said, I wish I knew about this when I was in charge of analytics.
Well, so Aileen, I love that you said this because here's the thing. We started writing the code for our technology in February of 24. So even though this idea existed before it really couldn't be done, we started really plotting things out in 23. We brought in our dev team, we started writing the code. We onboarded our first client in May of 24. And then we've added other clients to that. As a matter of fact, I'm thrilled we signed a massive client this morning, which we're really excited by, and just really starting to build this out. But the response from marketers has been really key. We talk about this as the creative intelligence system for marketers. And before diving in, I just want to offer, you're actually the first group that I'm talking to about this. We haven't officially launched it yet, but we're launching what's called the Pioneers Program, which essentially is for smaller companies to come in and be testers of the technology. We've launched a lot of features and functions over the course of the last 6 to 8 weeks, and we continue every 2 weeks to launch new features and functions. But we ask to apply. There's an application process, and we're kind of keeping it to a group. But if you have some time, I'd ask that you go in and look at that. But
Well,
here's what happens.
and I mean, there is one question that relates to what you're doing, and I wanted to pick up on your lakes versus oceans comment because, like,
Yes.
oceans for sure in terms of just the enormity of the data they have, but also, like they're only what, like 7 oceans or six or something. I don't know, my geography isn't great. There are, I don't know, tens of thousands of lakes, if I had to wager a guess, like hundreds of, I don't know how many lakes there are. I'll ask Perplexity later. But uh, and so there's the obvious analogy to for marketing, but I'll spell it out, right? Because like there are only a handful of platforms that are sucking up the vast majority of dollars to go with the platforms that are also sucking up the vast majority of data. So how much does it matter to reach every last lake when you only have a few oceans to deal with?
So that's such a great question, David. And I'm actually going to show you in the technology which oceans we plugged in first to start to get to that. But we have discussions with clients all the time. And as you all can imagine, the API ecosystem really didn't exist until, the last decade or so. And really in the last 3 or 4 years, those APIs have really gotten strong and robust or in the right place. Um, we've now integrated a certain number of platforms. We have on our roadmap to integrate others when you talk about the oceans. But the other side of data lakes is the assets that marketers have in hand today at their disposal. And I'll give you an example. We launched in beta with a major retailer that has 1,100 stores across the United States. So think about that from a structure standpoint. First of all, it's a franchise ecosystem. You have a multi-tier system of a master brand, a franchisee, and then individual stores. How do you look at that? And so we opened it up just on Meta for this particular client. And I'd ask you to take a guess at how many creative assets do you think they had just in their Meta account? Remember, 1,100 stores.
100,000?
5 million. Yep, 5 million.
That math is clearly not my strong suit today.
No, no, but you're actually your number that you guessed was actually one of the higher numbers when we've asked this question to people. And the reason I bring that up is that no human can possibly analyze 5 million assets in a historical library. It's just not possible. So with our technology, we're able to go through and analyze those 5 million assets and tell you creatively what worked, what didn't work. Go in, let's look at periods of time, like let's look at Black Friday over the last 3 years and understand what we ran from a marketing perspective and see what really worked with consumers so that we don't make the mistakes of the past and we actually improve on the things that we do in the future. So I'm going to actually log into the technology, and this is a financial services client, and we're looking at actually live data. And as we come into this, you're looking at, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. No, no, no. Sorry about that.
No, Mike, if you have a question, feel free.
No, I coughed. That was it. Sorry.
So what you're looking at here is a screen of 5,157 creative assets. And I'll tell you, it's looking at a backward looking 30-day period from today backwards. So for example, this is an asset that is a Facebook paid ad that launched yesterday. So it launched at about 11 o'clock last night. It's in the system. You can watch this in the system. You can actually go and link out to it. You can also look at the initial performance data. And then you can also look at comments, and you can go in and add a comment, and it goes out to everybody in the marketing ecosystem who's associated with this particular ad. But if I'm looking at all the assets, what I'm looking for is patterns. Now, a lot of people on here might not know exactly what they're looking at because this is not your company, this is not your brand, so you won't know what the campaigns are or the different ads and things like that. But this is coming from organic and paid. So you have organic and paid side by side. And one of the first things that we learn from most marketers is that they have a team that's responsible for organic and a team that's responsible for paid. Super inefficient. If you create something in organic that's gaining velocity, that's gaining traction, there's no mechanism in most marketing organizations to move it over to paid really fast or to turn it into a paid message in the marketplace. If anybody here sees Gary Vee on stage, Gary Vee talks about telling people shift dollars from your testing and focus groups, just shift it to organic. Start doing more organic. That's your focus group. That's going to tell you what's resonating with your consumers. That's one point. The other thing is, how do you make sure that it's consistent with your brand and your message and the story that you're trying to tell in the marketplace about your business? This is about balancing that brand and performance. So within the system, you're able to actually increase the size and scale of it. You can do that. And you'll see in the upper right is a logo where, for example, in this first row, you got Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Instagram. I see down the line, there's a bunch of Reddits. All of these are in the systems. These are the platforms where the assets are coming from. So David, to your question about the oceans, the first ones that we did were Meta, Google, The Trade Desk, and LinkedIn. Those were the first four that we did specifically for the audiences that we're going after. We have a pretty robust roadmap to build that out even further, but you have that all in the system. And once you put your credentials in, you're now in the system, and you have all of your information in there, and the data starts flowing through. One of the things that we found, which also to me is very incredible with most marketers, is that they don't know what the baseline KPIs should be for their particular business. Most of the platforms, and as a matter of fact, in this last month, Google just announced that they're going to be providing baseline KPIs or an analysis of baseline KPIs to the platform users. And the reason that I say that is that how do you know what the historical data is? Well, first of all, if I go into LinkedIn, I can do an analysis of all of the blog posts over a course of a period of time. So this is looking at a year period. If I want to come in here and I want to edit this, or I want to look at, let's look at click-through rate and hit go. It's analyzing 68 paid blog posts from the last year, and it's giving me what my metrics are based on my mean, the mean being essentially between 0.67 and 0.82. Anything between 0.82 and 0.97 is light green. Anything above 0.97 is what gets me my dark greens. So you can understand what comprises, based on those particular metrics, your performance. And you can look at all of these different performance metrics in the mix. Same thing as if you go into Google and you go into video. If I go into video and edit, we have all of these metrics in the system if you're running those and you can do up to 3 metrics to define whether something is red, yellow, or green. Again, it gives you directionally what you should be looking at, and the AI is going through and analyzing it. One of the other things that we did was this, and I'm actually going to do this one, Elaine, this is for you. So I'm going to do women wearing glasses just as a search, because the AI actually looks at static images, video images, and the metadata, and then analyzes that. So let's see what it comes back with. 60 assets. I'll turn off the heat map here. And here we go. There's nothing in the metadata that says that there's women wearing glasses in these ads. This is purely by looking at the images and pulling that back up. Here's why this is so important. Is you're starting to find a correlation between what's being done creatively and what's working. And the reason why we normalize performance data using the red, yellow, and green, and the shades of red and green, is because over time the system's starting to understand that when I do this kind of creative, it works. So if you were to run a video on YouTube, on Google, on LinkedIn, on television, whatever the channel is, and you saw success and it correlates back to these kinds of creative assets, this is what's ultimately informing the model. So things get smarter over time in understanding the kind of work that works. And that's where we're going as a technology in terms of building this out. The other things that we have in here are the simplest things, just like sorting data. So for example, if you're turning on this and you want to sort by top spend, you want to sort by best performers, worst performers. And then these two, which are gaining and losing velocity, is literally what ads are gaining velocity. So we have an algorithm that compares a period of time to a period of time to say this is improving over the last period of time versus these others which are losing their efficacy. So being able to look at all these things. The main point is establishing that foundation so that we can really get to that point of understanding the work that works. Does all that make sense? And so the last thing I'm going to show you is where we're going with things. Excuse me. So what we fundamentally believe, and the last story, when I started digital at JWT, media was completely integrated at J. Walter Thompson, and I built out. Maybe many of you knew Sean Finnegan. He was my first media director that I'd hired. Ronnie Jenkins was his replacement. So a lot of people, we worked together, really phenomenal people. And we fought to keep media in the system. As a matter of fact, in 1998, I got a phone call from the CEO, global CEO of Unilever, who said, Kevin, I'm forcing our companies to go online, our brands to go online. You have $80 million to take them online, with one caveat. We gave 20 million to MSN, 20 million to Yahoo, 20 million to AOL, and 20 million to Excited Home. Go figure out what to do with it. But all of it was measured together. And when that happened, they were just starting to form Mindshare. And Erwin Gottlieb would call me every week and say, you got to give us your media. And here's why. And I would say, I don't know how to do this with these things separated, until one day Martin Sorrell called me and he's like, your media is going to Mindshare. Stop arguing. So when people ask me about my time at JWT, I always say I spent 5.5 years building something I loved and 2 years destroying it, which we did. Creative and media have to be together. They have to be. And we're not doing that today. And I think that what that's become is kind of this false comfort in media metrics. And AI is phenomenal at measuring. If you think about media mix modeling, it's good at looking at media mix modeling. This impression reached this person at this time in this place to achieve this result. What's missing from that entire equation is what's this? What is it that the consumer saw? So we're solving that problem. And we think that this synergy of creative and media is really where the future lies in terms of what we're doing. This is the last slide I'll show you, which is where we're going, and it's the implementation of really uh, the LLM. So when you think about AI today and the companies that have been built, um, the capital needs to create your own LLM are obscene. I mean, it's really kind of crazy. And I just we fundamentally believe that you can't build a better LLM than OpenAI. You can't build a better one than Gemini. You know, whether it's Anthropic, Perplexity, these companies have spent hundreds of millions of dollars building their LLMs. It used to be that people didn't want wrappers or didn't want to invest in wrappers. That's completely changing, and we're seeing that. We're going to be rolling out our version, not our LLM, but we're plugging in, which plugs into our system, which essentially allows you to just ask the system a question based on your creative and what you have. And this gets to the vision in the future of being able to type in, you know, what were the best assets for Black Friday advertising over the last 5 years? And it's going to come back with every single asset across every single touch point to understand what were the best performing assets. So that as a marketer, you can look at that and say, oh, I see what's working. Or, you know, what are the best performing ads to reach a 25 to 34-year-old female in Chicago? It'll come to those kinds of answers. And ultimately, what we're going to be able to do is have you plug in creative that your teams are developing and have the system actually do some predictive modeling of saying, you know what, for what you're trying to achieve, this is going to work. Or you can also come into the system and with a Gen AI solution, have it generate the types of ads that would work that you can give to your team. It makes the briefing process of your team that much more robust.
And
So,
and we have a question that came in from Max, actually a
yep.
two-parter. One is your performance metric examples emphasize media metrics like engagement. How are you ingesting real business outcome data such as brand perception or sales?
It's a great question. So, you know, if you're working with a Salesforce or Shopify, we can integrate those platforms into the system to do the conversion. Also, within a lot of the existing platforms right now, there are conversion metrics that are fed back to Meta, that are fed back to Google. We have integrated Google Analytics. That's the first one that's in the system. So the near-term answer is we're in the process of integrating others to quantify that and other data sets. That's on our roadmap. Right now, Google Analytics is the main one, and the platform's conversion metrics are the main ones. But as we evolve and depending on the client needs, we're going to be integrating, you know, Salesforce. We're going to be integrating other solutions that have the quantifiable data. We also have we have a phenomenal dev team. So one of the things, David, that I do want to say is many marketers don't want that information outside their firewall. We do have an enterprise solution that we're able to obviously implement within a client's environment. We've built this in a way that's very containerized. So we can, if we want to install it on Azure, if you're in an Azure environment, we can do that. If you want to install it on AWS, we can do that. You know, Google Cloud or whatever cloud infrastructure you have is what we're able to do.
A related question, if a client has proprietary data like a brand tracking study, is that something that you can incorporate?
It is, and we want to do that. As a matter of fact, Aileen, one of the things that we talked about, which we want to be able to do, and I actually didn't show this to you. Let me show one thing real quick, because I think it's important based on what you're asking, is when I'm in the system and I click into a particular asset, you have all of this metadata here. So being able to add the metadata to the mix in terms of brand research studies, anything like that, we can always change performance metrics and fields to add other elements to that. But one of the things that we wanted to do is, let's say you're doing a attitude and awareness study or whatever the studies are, is appending every piece of creative that's associated with that research study so that you can actually go back over time and find those things. Because what we found with most clients is that when they do an attitude and awareness study, they tend to get that back and it goes into a folder somewhere or a file cabinet and is never seen again, or they go back and look at it the next year. We want to be able to look at those things in more real time so that you can understand those inputs. So I think Gene has a question.
Yeah, I had it's a well, it's a point and a question. So I agree with you 100% that creative is more important than data in terms of like how we have used it to date through media targeting. And then according to ComScore and Nielsen, it's actually better creative is 4 times more important to studies that they have done. I would also say that using data to improve IAB style ads probably isn't the best path forward. To make my point, the IAB standards were created 25 years ago, back in 1999. They have not been updated since that time with the IAB Flex accepted, which was never adopted. And if you look at the 728 by 90 leaderboard back in 1999, it almost filled the entire screen because it
Yep.
was an 800 by 40 browser. But browsers have grown a minimum of 4 times greater since that time, as the same. And now what we see is like ads floating in a sea of white. And we've seen, and as every year that the screens get larger, we see a commensurate decline in performance of those ads. And so the question is, how much does this cost? Because I work at Responsive Ads, and it's a company that's focused on aspect ratio design instead of fixed pixel. And what that means is the creative can fill slots edge to edge like water filling a cup. And I
Yep.
can see this being useful for both some of our clients who would want to pay extra to get those kinds of insights, and also for us for our outbound marketing, because we don't really have a lot of insight other than like the leads that are coming in.
Yep. I think you bring up a lot of really great points. First, I'll start with, one of the IAB standards I helped create back in 2012, which was called the responsive square, which I think is really the 1 by 1 pixel now. So when you talk about being able to fill a screen, when I was building One Mobile, we said, why can't you just have a dynamic ad that just sizes to the aspect ratio of the device? And so, we built that back then, which was, it's still amazes me how much stuff there is. Um, and I'm going to answer your question in a second. We also met with one of the largest holding companies about a month and a half ago, and they asked they asked the question, Kevin, what are you going to do when we're producing thousands of ads a week? And my answer was, well, first of all, I think that's a bad consumer experience. We're all talking about personalization. Bad ads personalized are still bad ads. That's number one. Number two is personalization is not really a solution that builds, I don't believe, builds longevity in a company and in a brand and builds affinity, because if your message is different for every single consumer, what are you doing? How are you building
Yeah, I agree
community?
with you 100%.
Yeah. So the answer is, we do it as a flat licensing fee. We made a very conscious decision right out of the gate to not charge seats right now, because we felt that this is about everyone having the same view. I often think about, if anybody was a Mel Brooks fan, there's the movie History of the World, where you have the Queen saying "walk with the same foot at the same time." And I feel like we're in a marketing world today where everyone is walking in different directions at different times at different paces. And we need to get into sync in terms of doing that. And so we think that that's really important. As a matter of fact, one of the things that you were just talking about, Gene, is essentially this. Yeah. When you have integration from a brand marketing perspective, and it was a Nielsen study that was done last year, they said ROI increases by 20%. Just as McKinsey last year in their research study said, when you have real-time analytics, you see 20 to 30% ROI improvement. And
Yeah,
if
and
you
that's like dramatically better than what you would get out of the best media targeting.
Well, I completely agree with you. And so when you think about that optimization and being able to move in real time, you're going to reduce that media waste. So look, there's only, and I said it at the beginning, there's only two ways to improve your marketing. Either you become more efficient in terms of your resources and your budgets, or you become more effective. Your advertising works better. That's either going to save you money or it's going to make you money. But either way, it's going to be a net plus for marketing organizations. And so that really is what we're focused on. The one thing I do want to point out, and we're not opposed to it, and we've been approached and have been having discussions with a number of the holding companies, is we have gone direct to clients out of the gate. And part of the reason for doing that is, I think we'll all agree, is the resource changeover, turnover, the channel turnover, the agency turnover, CMO turnover is kind of crazy still. You still have this incredibly fast turnover. Creative and the performance metrics of a brand are the DNA of the company. The company that I was just showing to you in the demo, I can go back and look at their advertising from 2014. So I'm able to go back over a decade and look at their advertising. Now, some of that is actually pointless. I don't really need to. But think about it from a retail perspective of being able to go back and look at the last 3 years, 5 years of Black Friday marketing and do an analysis of those best touch points across all the marketing channels. That's where we're getting to, and that's where things are really moving. But it's something that is so core to I'm amazed because I believe that what we're doing and creative is so core to the DNA of a company. That is, it's the same as their accounting software. They're not going to be giving out their accounting software. This is stuff that has to be in-house, that has to be owned by the marketers so that they have it for the long term. The last thing I'll say is we met with a major retailer about 2 weeks ago, and the head of media had been there for a year. And I said, "How long has it taken you to get up to speed?" And they said, "We're still working on it." I said, imagine this platform. You log in, turn it on, and your teams instantly can look at by channel what creative you've run over periods of time to understand what was there. Did it work? Didn't it work? What's the data? Can I share it out? And also not repeat the mistakes of the past to come in and look up something and say, hey, we want to do it's actually one of my favorite ones from this last client is we did a search for Santa in December and it came back with about a dozen ads that they ran with a Santa or a holiday theme in it, just based on the AI. And it showed that the stuff didn't work. They've run this stuff now for a number of years and it just didn't work. So don't waste the money or time on that. As a marketer, you can make those kinds of decisions.
This product kind of reminds me of BlueOcean.AI. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but they attack it from a brand sentiment standpoint. They look at I think it's close to over 10,000 data points at this juncture. But you can compare how your brand is doing against other brands and then look for opportunities within the sentiment of where that your brand could position itself. And I think that this would dovetail beautifully with a product like that.
I, you know what? I love that you said that, Gene, because we want to wrap in sentiment into this. We definitely want to do that as a component, and that is a key element of really organic more than anything. The number of shares, likes, and then more comments more than anything, and then the sentiment of the comments. Like, do people hate this? Do they like this?
Right.
What do they really think about it? And Karen asked a question here in the chat, which was, can you measure competition ads? We don't scrape the internet. So that's one thing that I don't know if that'll change or not in the future, primarily because if you look at, whether it's Grok or OpenAI, the reality is they're just openly reading the internet. They're looking at everything. But we don't scrape the internet. So from a competitive standpoint, right now, we don't have any solution for looking at the competitive. Um, we do believe that as we onboard more clients and understand categories and understand what kind of creative is resonating with different audiences, that we're going to be able to provide guidance to marketers as to the kinds of creative that would work purely as more of a briefing solution than actually generating creative. The VidMob, the one that comes up most often in terms of conversations is VidMob, which I'm sure many know. They really focus on real-time creative performance, but generating the assets themselves and many times about optimizing on platforms. So if you think about e-commerce where they're going from ad to platform, which sneaker, presents best in what colors and those kinds of things. Um, do API deal, doing, oh, Max. Ah, hey, Max. There you are. An API deal with Nielsen. Yeah, there's a lot on the roadmap. I'm going to say this. This has been self-funded and bootstrapped. We've raised no capital to do this. So, and full disclosure, we're in the middle of a capital raise, like a pre-seed capital raise right now. We know we're going to have to go to market and really accelerate that. But as of right now, we haven't raised any capital. So we have a certain priority of API integrations as of right now on our roadmap. But we're really excited with where we are.
Hey, Kevin, I had a question for you.
Yes.
So have you thought much about how targeting plays a role in the performance of these creatives, right? Like if there's an ad that's performing very poorly that you're tracking, maybe it's because it's on a page where the ad isn't viewable, or maybe it's just not targeting the right audience. So like how does that play into some of the things that you guys are looking at? Because it could sort of skew your results a little bit if, the ad might be performing poorly because of something that's not specific to the creative itself.
It's a really great point. And Todd, the answer right now is we also made a decision that we're not going to out optimize or outperform the individual platforms. There's a lot of data, features, and functions that are incredibly rich within the vertical platform, whether that's Google or Meta or anything like that. We're not supplanting the hands-on keyboards. We do capture gender, geo, and age. So we capture that as a metric. We believe the more data over time, we're going to be able to get to the answers of the question that you're asking. But as of right now, that's a variable that we just aren't able to answer yet. I hope in the future we will be able to. I think it'll reveal a lot of things as we continue to build and grow. But right now, I think it's fair to say we can't drill down to that level.
No
Kevin,
worries.
I like the fact that you're going direct to clients. Are you, having been on the agency side, there's not a lot of transparency and they don't necessarily have the client's best interest in mind. So are you planning on maintaining that direct to client channel if the clients want that?
So going back to the way that we set it up as a straight license, it's up to the client who they open it up to. And we've also had the discussions with the agencies where we said, look, the contract is transferable to the client. So when you set it up, it's on an individual client basis. So the contract, in essence, really isn't with the agency. It can be through the agency to the clients. My partner is a guy named Greg McConnell. Greg spent 20 years at WPP. 18, he was the head of the Rolex business for WPP. He was responsible for organizing all of the agency resources across WPP and external agencies on behalf of Rolex. So he grew that business from being, roughly 16 people to over 400 around the globe. He also did it for Puma, where he worked across 28 agencies across the globe. Now, I go back to the DNA. Rolex, in that instance, Rolex controls all their assets. We met early on, and full disclosure, we met with Tiffany and Company. That was really early. They loved what we're doing, but they control their brands so tightly. They do a great job that it would be good for them. It probably wouldn't be, as much of a revelation in terms of a brand like that. We think it would be incredibly useful longer term. But I think I might not exactly be answering your question. We plan on going directly to marketers now, And that's part of why we did this Pioneer program, specifically to open it up to smaller SMBs, because I always, when we speak to SMBs, I always ask the question, do you want to be an SMB? Is that what you're trying to do? And most of the time they look at me confused. They're like, well, what do you mean? I go, are you trying to be a small to medium business? And they're like, no, no, we want to be a big player in the category. Yeah, you trying to be a capital B. That's what you want to be. Set it up as a platform now so that you're evolving your marketing. This is about being evolutionary, not revolutionary. And so that's really what we're focused on. Let's see.
These are great.
I think that's it. So any other questions? Listen, my email is super easy, Kevin@marketing.ai. If you have any questions or want to reach out, just please reach out. We would love to talk to you further. You know, and
And we got a follow up from Gene. Gene, thanks for all these. So do you have channel partners who can bring clients to you?
so right now, the only channel partner we've been working with is Google. So we're part of the Google AI startup program, and we're actually just integrating into the the Google Marketplace right now. Beyond that, we don't have any channel partners. So we're early still. But
Now I'm saying, are you open to having a channel partner so we bring you clients, since you want the brand to have
oh
uh
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, Gene. Gene, let's connect offline and we'll
we'll
talk
talk it
further about
offline, talk about it
it. Yeah.
offline, yeah.
So, David, I really appreciate you making this time, and everyone, I really appreciate you all listening to our story. I'm excited. I hope you appreciate what we're doing. And if you're interested in knowing more, feel free to reach out to me.
This is fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun, Kevin. I'm so glad you got to fill us in on all this, and you'll definitely have to come back for share some more as this progresses, and if there are ways to also just circulate just some of the findings that that you're coming across here, especially across brands and ways to just better educate marketers. That's what we're here for. So,
Well, I do want to say one last thing, David. I think what you've done with the AI Marketers Guild is brilliant. You got on this so early in terms of what's going on in the marketplace. I think to me, it's kind of like, if you think back to the early days of the IAB, to me, the AI Marketers Guild is kind of like the IAB for AI and marketing and what that was 20 plus years ago. So
well,
it's pretty exciting to be part of it.
well, I'd also love to be able to charge people based on revenues and ad spend and things like that. But I also and I appreciate that and would love to work with everyone here to get us there. But I also want to make sure that if we go anywhere near that direction, it's inclusive in every sense of the word, right? Like we want the folks who are like pre-seed or I mean, you see some of the people in this room who might be a team of one and who are asking some of the toughest questions and doing some of the most provocative work in the space. So if we ever get there, please hold me to that to make sure we have all the best minds and doers in the room.
Awesome. And I already ordered your book. I ordered
Thank you.
go, and I'm looking forward to it.
It is actually a thing. So I mean, these are the advanced reader copies, but I'm hoping to get my actual case of them too. So appreciate that.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. See you soon, Kevin. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.